All right, all right, all right. I'll be honest. I was already not vertical. I was already horizontal. Knew I was going to do that right off the top because it's 9:19. My brain is not supposed to be functioning this late. But because I didn't give you a live stream earlier in the evening, I figured why not hop on right now to talk about Todd Monken's latest interview request, what really happened behind the scenes with Eddie Jackson, and inside the numbers on what was a fantastic in-season turnaround defensively for Zach Orr's group. So all that and more is what I have coming up. It's Bobby After Dark with no booze involved, which is probably best for all involved. And it's brought to you by my friends at Primary Residential Mortgage. I'm glad you're here. Like the video on the way in, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when I'm dropping my daily live content. I'm Bobby Trosset. I appreciate you guys for being with me. And without further ado, let's talk about the latest team that at the very least wants to have a chat with Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken, who of course just finished up year 2 with the Ravens. And year 2, what I mean by that is, of course, the regular season, his second regular season with more work to be done. And of course, they have an AFC championship game to get to, return to, and obviously more work to do after that with a hopeful trip to New Orleans coming in the very end next month. But the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, have become the third team who have requested permission to interview Todd Monken. That's according to Ian Rappaport's sources. And so he's referring to him as a key candidate. And maybe that's because, again, a couple other teams have been interested as well, which we'll get to in just a second. Chicago being the first, Jacksonville being the second. But why might Todd take an extra look at the Vegas Raiders? Well, they just parted ways, of course, one and done with their former interim head coach, who they gave the job for this year, Antonio Pierce. So all of a sudden, it's a situation in which Tom Brady is a minority owner. He is expected to be involved in the draft process, obviously, from an organizational perspective, as they get ready to pick their next quarterback. They currently sit, and they will sit, at 6 overall, barring a trade coming up in April's 2025 NFL draft. So that is obviously a key piece to this puzzle. They have a rookie tight end who had a historic season, who had a pretty historic and prolific career under Todd Monken as his play caller during their time at Georgia, where they won multiple national championships. And the Ravens, of course, know a whole lot about that rookie tight end because he lit him up in week 2, and that is Brock Bowers, the Georgia product, who had a tremendous first season with the Las Vegas Raiders. So that one of maybe many options as to why Todd Monken, from his perspective, would want to take a look at this job when he becomes able to, which, again, the requests come in this week, and then interviews, most of which will be done virtually, can happen next week. Teams cannot speak to coordinators this week, at least teams that are up with games that are coming up this weekend. So just keep that in mind. Todd will be fully focused on Ravens Steelers, and he said as much today during his Wednesday press conference during the coordinator interviews. Now, of course, this joins the Bears, the Vegas Raiders do, and the Jaguars, who have already submitted slips as well to request Coach Monken. Jacksonville has him on a list that's plentiful. Kellen Moore, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen, the Detroit boys, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, Patrick Graham, Robert Saleh, the former New York Jets head coach. So casting a wide net, if you will, are the Jacksonville Jaguars after letting go of Doug Peterson, the former Super Bowl winning head coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. And can you blame any team for picking up the phone to at least chat with Todd? These are some game notes courtesy of the Ravens PR team. I was just combing through these before we went on. In 2024, Baltimore's number 1 ranked offense, over 120 yards per game, became the first unit in NFL history to post at least 4,000 passing yards and 3,000 rushing yards in a single season. The Ravens franchise record, 7,224 total yards, stands as the third most in NFL single season history, trailing only the 2011 Saints and 2013 Broncos. Baltimore also became the first team in NFL single season history to score 40-plus passing touchdowns and 20-plus rushing touchdowns. I can go on and on and on. Lamar, Derrick, Mark, Zay, Rashad, all having career years. Zay gets his first Pro Bowl nod, the first homegrown Ravens wide receiver to earn a Pro Bowl nod. Mark Andrews, 11 receiving touchdowns. That's the best of his career single season wise. And that was the most among all tight ends as well. He had 55 catches for 673 yards. There was balance. There was precision. There was variety. There was explosiveness. And Coach Monken was at the epicenter of all of it. And of course, the offensive player of the year, if you ask PFF, is Lamar Jackson. Of course, a front-runner candidate for back-to-back MVP awards as well. And look at where he ranks at the end of the regular season. First in passer rating, first in yards per passing attempt, first in passing touchdown percentage, first in touchdown to interception differential, first in drop back EPA, first in overall rushing yards per carry average, first in quarterback rushing yards, first in passing plus rushing touchdowns when you add them up. I mean, go on and on and on and on and on. We all know where the best passer rating and NFL single season history mark, where he sits now, fourth overall with the great Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning, two first ballot Hall of Famers in their own right. So yeah, you can see why Todd is a hot item. He's a hot commodity right now. And the question becomes, would he leave after 2 years in Baltimore? Most coordinators that make it to the NFL level, since there's only 32 coveted head coaching vacancies out there, and certainly not every single one of those are available on an annual basis, all these coordinators are chasing the right opportunity. And for Todd, I would not be surprised if this ends up becoming the year that he takes a chance. The Ravens offense, as Dan Orlovsky noted earlier this week, wow, just a historic group. They now own the most yards per rush in a season. They average over 5.7 yards per rush. That beat the 1963 Browns, 5.74. They rank third all-time in most yards per play in a season, 6.85, trailing the 1954 Rams and the 2000 Rams, prolific teams. And, of course, that highest passer rating in a single season that I just told you about, Lamar is on that list. Derrick Henry at 31 put up over 1,900 rushing yards. He married the two phases of the offense. He married the passing and running game together, and they coexisted within the confines of a dominant offense. And they blew teams out of stadiums this year. And a couple of those teams, by the way, are actually going to be in the AFC playoff picture field. Two that come to mind: Sunday Night Football in September against the Buffalo Bills, and of course against the Denver Broncos. I believe that game was at the bank. Both of those games, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, were at the bank. So it's signature wins, it's variety all up and down his offensive roster. It's a likability. The dude's just likable. He's a player's coach. He's empowered Lamar Jackson. He's unlocked so many different elements to Lamar's game. Lamar's put forth his best seasons as a passer. He's winning games with his arm consistently. He's got a top wide receiver that he's made into a Pro Bowler. He's unlocked Rashad Bateman. Mark Andrews has continued to flourish. It's multiple usage of tight ends. The fullback, Pat Ricard, is able to eat from time to time in this offense. This is a guy who teams are going to want to talk to. And the Vegas Raiders now join the list. There are three of them. Three of them so far, and perhaps and counting. Chicago got this week started, submitting a slip to request Todd Monken. Jacksonville followed suit. And now the Vegas Raiders become the third of potentially many more to come for Todd Monken. Grew up just outside of Chicago. Tremendous amount of experience. Multi-time national championship winner, of course, during his time at Georgia. I think that comes to mind when you look at the Vegas job because of the talent that Brock Bowers has become in just one short year at the NFL level. Prior to Georgia, where he spent 3 years, he was with Cleveland. He spent just the lone 2019 season there as their offensive coordinator. Prior to that, he was in Tampa. He called plays there in 2018 and parts of 2016 and 17, including being their wide receivers coach. He did have some head coach experience as well at the college level, working at Southern Miss from 2013 to 2015. Prior to that, Oklahoma State, coached wide receivers in Jacksonville back in 2007 to 2010, which maybe gives you some insight there in terms of why the Jaguars would be interested. There's some familiarity. So the guy's got a lineage. His cousin, of course, is Coach Monken for Army football. He's built a hell of a program there for the cadets. His father was a coach. His father, tragically, just due to old age, passed away within the last year or so. And that's the latest there. Todd Monken, a popular candidate in this year's hiring cycle, which, of course, is just beginning as the postseason begins and the 18 teams that did not make the playoff field start to figure out, including 6 vacancies right now of those 18, what their futures look like. Your future could be looking kind of like this. Potentially a home buying opportunity in 2025. And you have just over a month to go to cash in on this incentive. And a subscriber, friend of the show, Dave, who just let me know on yesterday's program that he took advantage of this opportunity, he's already been working with Primary Residential Mortgage. And here's what's going on. You can turn your tax refund into a new home. PRMI has a wide variety of loans requiring little to no down payment. Your tax refund could cover it all. You can use it to cover closing costs, pay down existing debt, pay for upgrades to your existing home to increase its value. And on top of that, Primary Residential Mortgage is going to cover your closing costs as a Bobby Baltimore subscriber. You have to be in order to be eligible. These are closing costs up to $750 for applications that are submitted by February 9th of 2025. That's a month from tomorrow. One of you, like I just mentioned, Dave, and maybe some others as well, took advantage of this incredible offer recently, already on their way to buying a new home. So don't miss out. People are actively taking advantage of this incentive, and you should consider doing so as well. You can apply through the PRMI Mid-Atlantic website today. Just mention my name throughout your application process. You can get started by visiting the show notes. And I just want to say thank you to Primary Residential Mortgage for the continued support. Dave, I ain't talking about you. I don't think Dave had his last name last night, but this is proof that Dave already was taking advantage of this offer through PRMI. I got proof, and it ain't David Cure. This is kind of exciting. I hadn't seen this, Dave. What up, Dave? Shout out to PRMI helping me and my family purchase our first home with the Bobby Baltimore discount code. That fires me up right there. Let's go. Dave, congratulations, man. I might be right behind you. I'm thinking about doing that in my off season. There really is no off season when it comes to football because of the schedule release, draft prep, free agency, so on and so forth. But part of me kind of wants to dive into that. And Dave is motivating me right now to do so. Now, what Dave's referring to, just in case you aren't aware, is that up until February 9th, so just over a month from now, Primary Residential Mortgage is going to cover your closing costs as a Bobby Baltimore subscriber, up to $750. These are on applications, 4 applications that are submitted by February 9th of 2025. So I've been told by PRMI that one of you recently took advantage. I now know who that is. Congratulations, Dave. That's exciting. Dave, I ain't talking about you, Cure. But if you could all do me a favor and click on the link that I just dropped into the show notes, I would greatly appreciate the support. Go check it out. Primary Residential Mortgage, an opportunity to work with them and an opportunity to cash in like my friend Dave did. Dave, whose last name escapes me because he doesn't include it on his YouTube channel. But I'm glad he's taken advantage of it. And obviously, continued support and thank you to Primary Residential Mortgage for all the love that they give me through this channel. And you guys are hysterical in the chat tonight. We got Sip the Tally in the building. Coach Evans, what's going on, brother? Happy New Year. Hope you're gearing up for the wild card. Guys, go check out his channel if you don't already. Sip the Tally Films. Awesome X's and O's breakdown. Knows the game better than anybody or as good as anybody in this space. And just wanted to say hello to Coach tonight. While you guys are here and on the way in, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Let's see what Coach is saying too. Spagnuolo and Nagy got requested. Are you talking about in Vegas? I actually hadn't seen those reports. I saw Spagnuolo got a request. I hadn't seen Nagy yet, but it's a good reminder that Todd is just a part of a list. Like we mentioned a minute ago, Jacksonville's list feels like it's a mile long. A lot of these teams are casting wide nets. It sounds as if the Jets want to bring in double-digit candidates to interview. So it doesn't necessarily mean, right, that the inevitable is happening and that the Ravens are going to try and replace Todd Monken this offseason. It just means he's a hot name and teams want to, at least at the very least, speak with him, pick his brain a little bit, do a virtual conversation, and then from there, obviously the rest remains to be seen. Well, what we're gearing up for this weekend, of course, is a do-or-die postseason game with a trip to the divisional round on the line. For the Ravens, that means round 3 with their bitter rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And rumor has it, the great Terrell Suggs, who is a finalist for 2025 Pro Football Hall of Fame candidacy, alongside his former teammate and Raven great Marshall Yanda. The rumor has it is that T-Sizz will be the legend of the game coming up on Saturday. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff inside the bank. This will be an Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit broadcast, by the way. And I actually was just looking. This is a Prime Video streaming broadcast. So just make your notes, make your plans accordingly if you aren't going to be at the game, and make sure that you can watch this. I believe it's going to be on WMAR as well for those of you locally in the Baltimore area. So that's channel 2. But again, it will be a Prime Video broadcast. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and Kaylee Hartung. And then again, if you're local, it looks like you can get that on WMAR as well. So just keep that in mind. The injury report for this matchup from a Baltimore perspective looks very similar to the way that it did earlier this week. Zay Flowers remains a DNP, did not practice Tuesday, did not practice Wednesday. That is a knee. Of course, he was ruled out, as we all remember, from Saturday's game against Cleveland, and he remains, according to Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, a, quote, long shot to be available come Saturday. Kyle Hamilton upgraded to a full participant after being limited on Tuesday with a knee. Deontay Hardy was a DNP after popping up as a full participant on Tuesday. Looks like he's got a knee/personal designation there, so we'll have to see if they want to make him available come game day. He's been banged up on and off throughout this season. They brought him in at some point over the summer to be a return specialist for them, and it just hasn't worked out in his or their favor, simply really due to availability. And honestly, if there's an area that they probably should feel a little unsettled going into the postseason, I would think it's actually punt returner. There just hasn't been a lot of continuity at punt returner throughout this season. As far as Justice Hill is concerned, good news for him. He's been dealing with a concussion in recent weeks. Then he popped up with an illness, but after being limited on Tuesday, he was a full participant today. So Justice perhaps trending towards being back, readily available for the team, which obviously would go a long way to providing some depth for that Derrick Henry backfield. And speaking of the King, this is his time of year, man. The most rushing yards per game in December or later throughout the Super Bowl era, which includes the playoffs, belongs to number 22, who just turned 31 over the weekend. Derrick Henry, 99.8. That is the most rushing yards per game in December or later on average throughout the Super Bowl era, which includes the playoffs. And look at the list that he is atop of. If this doesn't speak to his greatness, I don't know what does. The great Barry Sanders, the great Eric Dickerson, who's been named quite often in recent weeks, as Saquon got awfully close to challenging that all-time single-season rushing record before sitting in the regular season finale against his former team. Jamal Lewis, former Raven, and Walter Payton, all south of Derrick Henry on this list. If that doesn't kind of make your heart stop, or at least just give yourself a second to sit here and consider the greatness that you're having a chance to witness week in and week out in year one of a 31-year-old ascending running back, I don't know what does. PFF ranked number 22 their best runner of the season. He ranked first in rushing grade overall, 93.1 according to Pro Football Focus. He ranked first in yards after contact with over 1,100. He was tied for first with rushing touchdowns, 16 to be exact. He was first in missed tackles forced with 80, just a ridiculous number. And he was first with runs of 20-plus yards, 21 to be exact. Need I say any more? This guy is on a first ballot Hall of Fame career trajectory. And my, oh my, has it been fun to watch. The Ravens are going to need him. This is why they brought him in, to wear down elite defenses. And from here on out, you will see elite defenses and elite defensive fronts. Pittsburgh is no exception. TJ Watt was banged up the last time these two teams met. George Pickens was so banged up with a hamstring, he didn't even play. Now, he played last weekend, and a lot left to be desired after that performance. Several drops, some in-game antics. Not great right now. The Steelers come in reeling. And Big Ben, actually, just the other day, Big Ben Roethlisberger was pretty brutally honest about the way that he feels like the Steelers match up with the Ravens going into Wild Card Weekend.
Be going into the postseason the right direction. Okay, so you can pull some comparisons of us. This Steelers team this year, right, going in at the 6th seed. The Pittsburgh Steelers in 2006 went in at the 6th seed too. Okay, the difference in the two teams are, so people are like, yeah, let's go, we can do it again. The difference is we went in, we snuck in, right? We had to win, I think, our last 3 or 4, maybe. I mean, we had to win some games to get in, and we did that. We were trending in the right direction. This team, this Pittsburgh Steelers team, has lost 4 in a row. They're going the wrong direction. Same thing as like Baltimore right now. Like, I think that's why I said I didn't want to go play Baltimore. I know there's a lot of fans out there and a lot of people are talking about we're excited to play Baltimore. And I get it. I understand it. I think Chef Evans is excited about Baltimore. We'll ask him. But that team's playing good football right now. Their quarterback is ridiculous. I mean, we know he is, but he's ridiculous. And their defense, which was their Achilles heel, is actually playing pretty good right now.
Yeah.
They're going in trending the right direction. We're going to the postseason trending in the wrong direction.
Big Ben, lots of complimentary comments throughout this week on his show, Channel 7, for the Ravens, and perhaps somewhat worried about this matchup. Internally, I've already heard from several Pittsburgh Steelers based on some of the interviews that I've consumed from their media scrums, and guys like one of their offensive linemen, or is it Broderick Jones, I believe his name is. He relished the matchup. He wanted a rematch. A defensive player whose name escapes me echoed that sentiment. They want revenge. They wanted this matchup, and they still have a sour taste in their mouth. Well, that's all great. I just don't think they have the horses to keep up with the Ravens. And unless it's one of your classic, like the first time around this year, the first time these two teams played in Pittsburgh, right? Your classic AFC North Baltimore-Pittsburgh game where it's low scoring, funky, obscure, strange, special teams-esque, right? Then I just don't see how the Ravens don't get the job done here. You play clean football, you play disciplined football, and you run it effectively, and you keep Pittsburgh on its toes from the jump, and perhaps use Keaton Mitchell in some spots that maybe you would have Zay Flowers for otherwise, then I like the way this is setting up. More so than anything else, I like what this graphic shows, courtesy of Up and Adams, friend of the show, Sarah's BFF, Kay Adams. They put together one heck of a graphic that I think speaks to what we all already have kind of understood or come to understand about this defensive turnaround and where it ranked weeks 1 through 10 and where it finished 13 through 18. Of course, the bye was sprinkled in there as well, 14, I believe, after the Philadelphia game, which was December 1st, if I'm not mistaken. But scoring defense, they were the 25th ranked group the first 10 weeks. They finished first, 13 through 18. Total defense through 10 weeks, 27th. They ranked first, 13 through 18th. Passing defense, we all know, the Achilles heel of this team through the first 10 weeks and certainly showed up as such. Ranked dead last, 1 through 10, finished first, weeks 13 through 18. You see the trend here. Third down percentage, they went from 30th to first. Red zone defense, they went tied 20th to first. Opponent passer rating, 26th to first. This has been a remarkable turnaround that honestly probably hasn't been talked about enough. And on top of that, they made key personnel adjustments as well. And one that's been talked about a lot in these circles, of course, is moving Kyle Hamilton back to traditional safety on the back end, benching Marcus Williams a couple months ago, promoting Ardarius Washington, and cutting the veteran in Eddie Jackson, who at one point we all were speculating was kind of becoming a headache behind closed doors based on reading the tea leaves from what John Harbaugh had to share through the media. Well, now that's fact. Jeff Zarebek's reporting from late last month, courtesy of The Athletic, read as follows. Jeff wrote, the Ravens also made a notable change at their other safety spot, Marcus Williams, who signed a 5-year, $70 million contract in 2022. He was benched after he was involved in several of the coverage breakdowns. He's been a healthy scratch for 4 consecutive games. That was at that time. Veteran offseason signing Eddie Jackson, who started 4 games. Oh, we all remember one of those. I believe that was Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. Or was that Pittsburgh? I can't remember. John Harbaugh attempted to send a message, it seemed, to Marcus Williams, and it backfired. And in the Cleveland game, we all remember Eddie dropped a couple breadbasket would-be interceptions from Jameis Winston, including Kyle Hamilton. That was probably the most shocking play of the entire year that would have sealed the Browns game the first time around. But look at the end of this paragraph right here. Veteran offseason signing Eddie Jackson, who started 4 games, also was benched and then released after his frustration boiled over with an outburst at Zach Orr in front of players and coaches. Guys, you can say what you want about what this defense looked like the first 10 weeks, and I think this graphic tells you all you need to know. But I'll tell you what, I know emotions run high, and in these locker rooms, in these player-only settings, especially the day after games with tensions running high and a lot on the line, pride, contracts, win-loss records, so on and so forth, things can get tough. But allowing your frustrations to boil over when you're part of the reason for why these statistics look the way they did weeks 1 through 10, that doesn't fly. Not a good look. Eddie remains unsigned, I believe, or is he with the Chargers? Did he join the Chargers practice squad, I want to say? I believe he's part of the Los Angeles Chargers practice squad. So Jim Harbaugh gave him a shot. But this is the kind of stuff here that just not going to fly. So number 39, not exactly an experiment that worked out in the Ravens' favor. But we just learned that recently, courtesy of Jeff Zarebek's reporting. And on the wrong side of that was first-year defensive coordinator Zach Hoare. Excuse me. That's when you know it's late. Bobby After Dark, welcome. First-year defensive coordinator Zach Orr was on the wrong side of that temper tantrum. And that is the new information that I wanted to share with you tonight. Tongsley just dropped in a $20 super chat donation and says, Bobby, if Brandon, meaning Stevens, is getting targeted, why aren't we seeing much safety help? Wouldn't you assume they will throw to whomever 21 is guarding? I don't even think that's an assumption at this point. I think that's a guarantee. And that's something that Jimmy Smith and I talked about at length at the Be More Around Town pregame show tailgate that I do this past weekend. I did prior to the Cleveland game. And just in case you guys haven't seen that yet, here is Jimmy talking about Brandon. I feel like this answers that question. Now, he's obviously going to need coverage help, and I know that's what you're talking about, but Kyle Hamilton obviously has a lot on his plate as well. Same with Ardarius Washington. They can't always come to the aid of Brandon, but here's Jimmy's perspective, just in case you missed it.
Great secondary. I think Stevens went through his Marcus Peters phase. Honestly, like somebody gets targeted, right? I'm not going to target him. I'm not going to target him. That person gets targeted. So sometimes it is the fact that you're not playing as good, or the fact that they just say, hey, you know what? We're just going to go at him. He doesn't have enough confidence. So I think Brandon Stevens has probably showed the most of any DB we have. Wow, like what's the relentless resilience, because he has been getting targeted. And when they won first down, they come after him. But the fact that we got Tre'Davious White and they kept Brandon starting lets you know that like he's a guy that can keep working towards what he's going to. When the ball gets in the air, he finds that calmness and just makes the play, which he does sometimes. But that's what they target the most. The difference between Brandon Stevens is ball skills. It's not that he's not there. It's not that he's not fast enough. It's not that he won't tackle. He does all those things. But when that ball's in the air and that panic hits your heart at corner, it's a different feeling. The ball hits the air for him, panic settles in, I think, a little bit, and he doesn't just gently turn around, go up and grab it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's right there. Like, he turns around, the ball hits his elbow. Like, he's not there. It's just when teams are targeting you like that, it's very hard to gain confidence because you're like, every game I'm getting 12 targets. Yeah. And they're getting like 8, right? And then you read one thing or somebody says one thing, you start to – your confidence goes down. As a cornerback, your confidence is – probably, besides your athletic ability, which is number one, I would say your confidence is 1B. Like, you need to be just as confident as you are athletic to play corner. If he's a high draft pick, they give him another year because, okay,
it's a contract.
You know what I mean?
It's a contract year for him.
Exactly. So he had to battle something that, you know, a lot of corners have. You go through this. You go through a part where people think, hey, he's vulnerable, right? And the thing is, once somebody does one thing to you as a corner, they're going to do it to you for the next 4 games, 5 games. If you can't stop it, they'll do it to you all season. So his thing is not being sticky in coverage. It's not doing. It's literally having the calmness and the patience when that ball's in the air to locate it, right? Like once you get on a I'm getting beat. You start playing a little bit more tense, a little tight. And I felt like he went through a little bit of that. I think they brought Tre'Davious in. Tre'Davious had a couple good plays on some fades, right? And then Brandon, all of a sudden, you start seeing Brandon in the game. And I watched, obviously, them the most. I watched Brandon get even more close in tight coverage. Like, I don't agree with every PI that they call on Brandon. But he is the one that they target. Just like Marcus was the one that they targeted a few years ago when it was all of us. It's just if you have laps in your game, your coverage, your game, they're gonna come after you. Yeah. So for him, it's like, oh, you're good, you're really good. But I'm always betting 50-50 that when I throw that ball, I don't know if you're gonna turn around. And right now he's 50-50. I don't know if he will. Yeah. I don't know if he. So that I thought was a big improvement in the last 10 weeks because he's now been in the call. If it is the PI, I'm like, I don't know about that one. Before I'm like, oh my God, I'm back. Now I'm like, oh no, he's right there. Like I can see his growth.
Some exquisite analysis there from former Raven, Super Bowl champion, former first rounder, and a cornerback, Jimmy Smith. Tongsley, thank you for giving me an excuse to replay that. If you guys want to go check out the full interview, he talks about Eddie Jackson. He talks about Marcus Williams and a number of other things. You can go check it out in the archived best of Bobby Baltimore clips over on the homepage right here on YouTube. Over 730 of you here tonight, late night. Apparently that's the new segment. 9 o'clock's way too late. I've already had a couple slip ups, like calling Zach Hoare, which is not something that I ever want to do again, but I just did it now. Good Lord. Sarah and I will be back tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. Brooke Pryor will be joining the show coming up on Friday for our official third time through Ravens Steelers preview. Not like there isn't already enough familiarity there. If you guys haven't already done so, please join the Bobby Baltimore Discord server. It is currently a pinned comment right now in the live chat. It's a 24/7 hub for conversations surrounding Baltimore sports. It's a great way to interact with me behind the scenes. And I want to continue to say thank you to Primary Residential Mortgage for their support. They have been supporting the channel as a sponsor, a lead title sponsor of mine for well over a year. And Dave, not Cure, just took advantage of the Bobby Baltimore special offer. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about Dave's home buying process. And I'm looking forward to finishing up the week with you guys accordingly. We'll catch up with you tomorrow over on the Vault, 12 noon Eastern. Sarah and I will be back. Thanks to all of you that participated in today's homage t-shirt giveaway. And hey, I don't want to tease this too hard because I got to see if it's going to actually happen. But we are seriously considering dropping a merch apparel line for the Vault. And maybe there'll be some Bobby Baltimore items sprinkled in there as well. So we have a big meeting coming up on Monday. And maybe, just maybe, if this team makes a run, we're going to drop a merch line. And it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. But keep that in mind. We'll have to take a look. Layla says, thank you for your coverage. Have a great night. You do the same, Layla. I know that you entered yourself in with a couple super chats earlier today, which is always appreciated. But yeah, I appreciate you guys very much. Hope you have an awesome night, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Thanks for joining Bobby Late Night. And I don't know if I could do that again because I'm starting to call people names, and that's not great. You know, inevitably it'll happen again. But until then, thanks to Primary Residential Mortgage, and thanks to all of you for hanging with me late night. Get some sleep. Catch up with you on Thursday.